Hello, everyone, and welcome to our panel on Venezuela, rebuilding power and rebuilding opportunities. We've got a really great set of panelists today. So we've got a short amount of time, but what I wanted to ask you is the panelists. And so we've got a mix of operators, we have geopolitical experts, we have representative business associations, and we have people from Venezuela. So starting again at the top, could I ask each of the panelists just to talk about the three main points that you want to address in the panel, and also talk a little bit about just very frank views of how you feel that the reconstruction of the energy sector in Venezuela would help to contribute to job creations both locally and globally. So anyway, start from the top. Let's start with Sonia. The three main kind of observations that you have given the panel topic today.
Well, today I would like to talk about work sustainability. I think it's super important for Venezuela to identify where is work sustainability at this point in the map. As we speak today, Venezuela has lost the equivalent of about 9 million citizens, and they are in diaspora. And so one of my concerns is, how do we bring them back? What incentives do they have to come back to the country? There's incredible amount of talent that has been absorbed by many other countries. But 9 million people 9 million is the size of London. So today, Venezuela wakes up and where you are a citizen in Venezuela and everybody's gone. So that's a huge concern. How do we revitalize Venezuela from the energy workforce? How do we create durable jobs that do not come just in the form of temporary offerings, but reconstruction and actually official public payroll involved maybe? How do they emerge or how the operators emerge, not just from being a firm with a small project, but individuals that provide predictable rules of employment and long-term investment for them as well. If we have long-term investment in Venezuela, then that means the jobs are going to be there to stay. And I'm talking about not just the small contracts, 3 to 6 months type contracts, but I'm talking about contracts that last for years to come.
Riva, you have a very different perspective than the other panelists.
Thank you, Kathy. Yeah, I'm coming at this more at the 30,000 foot view here, right? And looking over at the evolution of U.S. foreign policy priorities, how that's being applied to the Americas region more broadly. And Venezuela kind of is seen as, from this administration's perspective as one, it was unfinished business from the first term, that first Trump term. And so, kind of finishing off the operation that got started with a lot of different defections that happened during Trump 1.0. But what comes next, right? And not just for Venezuela, but when we look at the administration's priorities for the broader region, and that question of sustainability becomes critical, right? Because the foreign policy agenda is packed. Strategic competition with China is still a massive one, even though the administration is trying to tiptoe around it. And so there's a nexus here, though, with Latin America and where the U.S. is trying to reassert its influence. But what is the attention span that we're talking about here, right? And what does that mean, for on the ground, right? For the workers who, and the opportunities that are at hand, and how do we create that stickiness, right? So that the development that we all aspire for here actually takes root.
Oman, could you just give us just a taster, please, of what it is that we'll be talking about and your perspective on the topic?
Well, I'm trying to talk about the Venezuela Energy Reconstruction Challenge, and it's fundamentally a skills and system challenge, not a resource one. The country retains world-class reservoirs, legacy infrastructure, and decades of field data, but has suffered a prolonged erosion of operational engineering and managerial capabilities. Also, I would like to talk a little bit more about the Venezuelan technical diaspora, Many now seniors or retired, but represent a unique knowledge reservoir database. These professionals were trained directly on Venezuela's field, facilities, and reservoirs and understand their specific behavior, risk, and constraint better than any external workforce. And finally, probably a little bit talk about why the energy reconstruction in Venezuela can generate jobs through a structured knowledge transfer where senior diaspora experts could act as a technical mentors and reviewer or advisors or trainers of young Venezuelan engineering technicians. So probably this is basically my three points that I would like to address in my talk.
Ileana, would you be able just to give us a few tidbits of what it is that, what perspective that you're going to bring to the panel?
Well, as a local content expert, I think the elephant in the room is what's going to happen really in Venezuela regarding local content, and is that going to be a priority? Is that, I mean, is everybody assuming that Venezuelans that are in country are ready? Are suppliers, local suppliers, ready to the reconstruction, the revamping of the whole industry, and what's going to happen with all of this diaspora that you know, it's around the world? Are they coming? Are they not? And really, I think I will deep dive more on the role and timing of local content in Venezuela for its reconstruction.
So when we talk about rebuilding power or rebuilding people, rebuilding Venezuela's energy sector, what has to come first? Is it physical assets? Is it institutions? Is it human capital? Are multiple ones at the same time? And why is it? Is there a phased order? So that's probably the first. I'd like to give each of the panelists about 1 minute just to respond quickly on that one, and then we'll have a discussion maybe around some of the challenges of doing that.
I believe that Venezuelan institutions are the foundation. I truly believe that that's the case, because that's what has caused the damage, and that's where the corruption has been settled at. So we need serious enforceable contracts, the guarantee for the investor and the guarantee for the operator in the region that they do work and operate under enforceable contracts. Super important. I also believe that the predictable labor rules are needed and required. And what are the rules? And nowadays, if the Venezuelan population has been abused by the government for 26 years, so that calls for a little bit of legislation coming into place and rebuilding the predictable labor rules. What are the new rules? And how those rules line up with operators from the United States, for example. We are the biggest buying power in the equation, but they operate under different laws and rules. And in the United States, we operate under the Anglo-Saxon Code of Law, which is a whole different labor description and a whole different labor content of law. In Venezuela, we operate under the Roman Code, which benefits and highly benefits the employee and not the employer. So how does the employer line up with that? What kind of agreements and concessions we make on the predictable labor rules? Macroeconomic stability as well. Venezuela lacks so many things, and nowadays that it's super important that we have that macroeconomic stability. And then property rights and independent judiciary, meaning that if I go to Venezuela and I am investing as a corporation, what are my rights and how are they protected in Venezuela? And what are the rulings over that? What type of protections I have over my equipment? During the Chavez regime, he woke up one day and he said, all this stuff is mine, and all these materials and properties and equipment and all this production is mine. And companies lost billions. ExxonMobil lost millions. ConocoPhillips lost millions, or billions. I'm not talking millions. They lost billions. So I understand the resiliency that they will have to consider in order to go in, but also the the lack of trust that they have in the Venezuelan system. So institutions have to be rebuilt.
I think Riva, I'd love to hear your perspective on this, because the points that Sonia has mentioned have been mentioned quite a bit. So the legal framework, the protection, sanctity of contract, the expropriation risks are real. Is there anything that you might see from your vantage point that we're missing here that could be useful as an addition when we talk about rebuilding?
No, more to reinforce Sonia's point on rule of law more broadly, right? And where does rule of law come from? It comes from institutions, right? And the predictability that comes out of, actually carrying out the law here. And as we all know, there's a big, risk reward calculation that every oil major and services company has to make on whether they're going to put their next dollar in Venezuelan reconstruction relative to other high margin energy plays. And so this becomes such a critical question here. And if we just look at what's actually changed in Venezuela, well, the decapitation of the regime with the removal of Maduro, as we all know, that's the tip of the iceberg, right? And there are very, very deep patronage networks that run beneath him and that remain very much entrenched. A lot of illicit trade, ghost trade, and arbitrage networks that are very elaborate and again deeply entrenched. And that does not go away overnight. Moreover, the U.S. is not signaling any political intention to try and dismantle that, right? And I think that's why there's a lot of awkwardness over, whether we'll see Marina Corina Machado actually, get her shot at a democratic transition with U.S. endorsement or not, right? And right now the focus is very much on the current regime players, by at least coming from the White House. And so, if there isn't an intention, right, to actually build out these institutions, to carry out the rule of law, to really dismantle very corrupt networks that run beneath, that's obviously a massive issue that any investor, any company coming in has to weigh.
Oman, I probably want to turn this over and again sort of polish the question a little bit and talk about, well, you represent the private sector. You've worked with PDVSA in the past. What do you see as investors needing to have in place in order to actually put those dollars into the country? So let's assume that there is a lot of U.S. support. Let's assume that the legal and contract laws are in place, but are we still going to have the Exxons of the world and the large IOCs saying, look, it's uninvestable, not possible? So what is going to make it investable? Hard question, we leave it to you to answer.
I would like to put aside all the political situation right now, because as you mentioned, and Sonia and Riva has mentioned, there are many things that can be right now to define why so many people consider Venezuela uninvested right now, because it's very important. But I think that for me and for what I see, rebuilding Venezuela energy sector, for me, I think that a human capital must come first in terms that physical assets can be repaired, institution can be redesigned, and rule of law and all can be changed. The financial resources can be mobilized. However, none of these elements will function sustainable without skilled individuals to operate, manage, and govern them. The presence of competent professionals is essential to ensuring that systems and processes run effectively over time. Infrastructure, no matter how advanced, will inevitably deteriorate if not supported by capital, by capable individuals who maintain that institutions, or the institution without expertise become inefficient. If we focus on rebuilding people, developing their skill, instilling discipline, and fostering accountability, they will in turn have the capacity to restore physical assets and strengthen institutions. Ultimately, I think that the process of restoring power and progress in Venezuela begins with investing in and rebuilding its people. Rebuilding power begins with rebuilding people. all this political situation, we have seen so many experts talking about what is it. All these big companies have said, they mentioned about the political situation, and I totally agree. But after this happened, we need to focus also in people, in the human capital that is going to take place in Venezuela. This is pro. I don't know if this is good. My answer.
Great, thanks,
This
Omar. I
is-
mean, what I'm hearing you say then, and just to recap and just to build on what the other folks have said, is that your view on the first phases of the reconstruction and what needs to happen is just to focus on the human capital, that the physical infrastructure cannot be rebuilt without this technical knowledge in hand first.
Yes. Well, I was trying to, even if I totally agree in terms of we need to have uh, a stable democracy. We need to have rule of law. We have to need to all these things to this happen. We still have producing almost 1 million barrels per day. So we have still have an institution there that are working somehow. But to bring all these people back or to recover all this production and rebuilding the Venezuela energy sector, I think that we need to focus also in people,
Right.
in the workforce.
Well, great segue, I think, into some viewpoints I'd like Ileana to elaborate on. So Oman has been very clear, the focus on the people and the human resources and the capital required. Now, can you give us a view? Because obviously we don't want to have the rebuilding of Venezuela, energy, skills, and power without Venezuelans involved. And yet, is there an order that comes into place by hiring Venezuelans in Venezuela, Venezuelans diaspora, or other expats who have experience working in other sort of fragile conflict environments? So Ileana, could you give us enlighten us with some of your views on how we build the local content that you're passionate about, and how we do it in a way which actually helps to rebuild the country quickly, using the knowledge that Oman speaks of?
Yeah, I can become very passionate about it because people think, okay, you as a local content expert, what do you think? So Venezuela, Venezuelans for Venezuelans, and Venezuelans have to operate, and we need to be. Even as myself as Venezuelan, I'm crazy. Like I can't wait to go back to work for my country. But I think I agree with what the other panelists have said about what comes first. But to me, it's not a thing of the chicken or the egg. I think the institutions, strong institutions, are going to be built by the human capital. So I think the institution has to come from people that have knowledge on what does it take to develop the country economically, but also they have to have knowledge and experience in policy. So not everybody can draft policy or design policy. I mean, it's just a matter of understanding what is really you're trying to solve in the country. And there are so many aspects, so many issues right now. Now, going back to your question in terms of the order, I want to be clear, and I'm not saying that local content is not the most important thing, but definitely it's not the priority right now, because right now Venezuela needs the help, needs all the human capital from everywhere. So even Venezuelans are going to actually become expats in their own country, because a lot of us have made a life overseas, not just in the U.S., everywhere. And for us, it's not that easy to go, oh, let's leave everything behind and then go back home. Some of us don't have home anymore. So I think what I'm trying to say is we need help, and we need foreign investment, foreign capital for the beginning. And if Venezuelans are available and they can do it, of course, they're going to be the first one. But just limiting or regulating or imposing or expecting that only Venezuelans are going to be allowed to do it, that will, to me, will be a mistake. We can care about that later on, but right now the priority is to bring everyone that can go there, all the companies, and then once the country is strong, is reestablish the assets, and then we can guarantee that there is qualified working capital, like local people, local workforce, then we can start talking about, okay, let's go back to what we had before about local content. Venezuela had local content, but it was not as rigid as in other countries. So I think this is something that will have to be addressed later on as a topic, as a local content requirement, but not now, not in the first 3 to 5 years or more.